That should be enough, I think. Yep. Yo, what's up guys? Check the timestamps below to navigate through the chapters, and let's do it. Rupture Tendons plus Chicken Claw. This is the vanilla ice cream of combos in this game. You see that the enemy is low on physical armor, then you use Rupture Tendons to reduce their phys armor to 0, then you press Chicken Claw. The chicken runs around and takes physical damage. It's an extremely powerful both CC and damage combo which lasts for 2 turns. You might even haste the chicken so it can move further and take more damage. Just keep in mind that sometimes AI won't move the chicken a lot or at all, and it's just gonna stand there and take no damage. Death Wish plus Living on the Edge. This will allow you to start fights with a huge damage bonus. This is how it goes. Drop your HP to minimal levels before the fight. Wait for the armor to restore. Once it happens, cast Death Wish, then Living on the Edge, and then immediately start the fight. Keep in mind that this damage bonus is additive for weapon skills, but multiplicative for spells. Also, don't forget that if you want to preserve the damage numbers, you should minimize any life-stealing effect and prevent any healing. For those of you who want to RP as a battle mage, you should try casting Sparks and then Enrage. This combo will make your Sparks crit 100% of the time. Savage Tutelage talent is mandatory for this combo, otherwise Sparks will never crit. For the best value, use skills which attack multiple times like Flurry, Dagger's Jaw, Onslaught, etc. Or skills which can hit multiple targets in one cast, like Whirlwind, Bull Rush, Battle Ram, etc. We can group up enemies to get even more value. Superconductor and Fan of Knives are pretty good abilities which hit all enemies in sight. Here's the trick. First, you position yourself and enemies so that there will be a straight line between you and them. Second, you make sure that the lines of projectiles stop at the closest target. After that, you press the skill and all projectiles will be shot at the front enemy, dealing pretty high single target damage. As you know, you can save a lot of action points if you stack up enemies together by using skills like Teleportation and Nether Swap. If enemies are clumped together, then the value of AoE skills grows significantly, and thus buying, crafting and keeping TP and Nether Swap scrolls is a very good idea. But in case of you not having enough scrolls, you may do the following combo. Backlash on the opponent number 1, then Nether Swap with opponent number 2, then TP opponent number 3 into the pile. By doing so, you're gonna group up 3 enemies by spending 4 action points total. This combo has a very big value. You can replace a Backlash with any jumping skill, just use it close to opponent number 1 and repeat the previous cycle. Next, Siphon Poison and Arrow Spray. You can cast a Flaming Crescendo on any low HP summon like an Oil Blob, a Totem, a Bloated Corpse, or a Wind Up Toy. For example, I toss an Oil Blob into the pack of enemies, then cast Crescendo on it, and at the end of its turn, or when the summon dies, it will do a pretty decent damage for a low cost. Another Crescendo combo requires a setup. Stack up enemies near a dead body, then cast Corpse Explosion, then summon a Bloated Corpse from the same body. Follow it up with the Supercharger and Flaming Crescendo. Then slap someone with your blob and make it burst. It is a pretty flashy combo which costs only 4 action points. You can do a pretty good damage if we cast Rain, then follow it up with Global Cooling. After that, cast the Icebreaker spell. Just be aware of the friendly fire. If you use Firebrand, Venom Coating, Elemental Arrowheads or any runes on your weapons, then their damage will be converted into 1 damage type for skills like Gag Order, Sawtooth Knife, and Marksman Fang. This also works for any consumable special arrow. You can pause to see the differences. Casting Flaming Tongues and Demonic Tutelage will create a nice defensive barrier which does both magical and physical damage. We can even add a reactive shot into the same pile. Now let's talk about Shackles of Pain. First combo is with Last Rites, a spell which resurrects an ally but does big piercing damage to the caster. As you guessed it correctly, you have a dead ally in the field, you chain yourself to an enemy with no physical armor, then cast Last Rites to both resurrect your teammate and do big damage to an opponent. The second combo is to use Reactive Armor, Supernova, or other AoE abilities, which will hit both you and the opponent who was chained to you through Shackles of Pain. The reason to do so is that at first, those skills will do damage to the opponent, but because spells also hit you, that damage will be transferred to your opponent through Shackles of Pain, which sort of doubles the damage. Speaking of the Reactive Armor, before using it, cast Bone Cage, Fortify, Deflection Barrier, Heart of Steel, and drink some physical armor potions to maximize the damage. Next, let's look at the situation. There are several enemies standing close to each other. One of them has a deflective barrier on. Let's call him enemy number 1. Another one doesn't have it. This will be enemy number 2. So what's gonna happen if you cast bouncing abilities like Chain Lightning, Marksman Fang, Epidemic of Fire, Ricochet, Bouncing Shield, or Healing Ritual on enemy number 2, the guy without a deflection? Well, first the skill will hit them, then bounce to enemy number 1 just like this skill should. But because enemy number 1 has a deflective barrier, the skill will then bounce back back to enemy number 2. So essentially, you'll create an additional projectile by striking non-deflecting enemy while they're standing next to their deflecting ally. If at least 2 of your characters are low on any kind of armor, then don't forget about the Soulmate. For example, both of our characters are low on magic armor, so we use Soulmate and then Arcane Stitch to fully recover it for both characters. If you see an enemy who stands in close range with low physical armor, then cast a Decaying touch and follow it up with any healing ability, like Restoration for example, to do pretty high damage for multiple turns. This does physical damage and thus scales with Warfare. If you want to apply a group decay, then either use Bloodstorm, which is a late game spell, or apply it with the help of Curse Scrolls. Combine any Void Tainted Fish from Act 2 with High Quality or Alien Tormented Soul and Piece of Paper to craft a scroll. So this is how you do it. Remove physical armor from the group of enemies. Then you'll require either water or blood surfaces or clouds to touch those opponents. Casting Rain or Blood Rain can help with that. Then use the Curse Scroll on a blood or water surface and voila, you got a group decay. Oh, by the way, if you've decided to go with the Cursed Blood surface, then you can use a Bloodsucker spell on a decaying enemy to do a pretty good damage. Actually, cursed combos work really well with many effects and surfaces. For example, cursing a chilled character will freeze them for 2 turns instead of 1. If you see someone is fortified, then create a poison beneath their feet and then curse it to apply acid and remove that fortify. Cursed Shocking Ground will apply stun instead of shock, which could be solid for CC parties. Cursed Ice Surface has a chance to freeze any character, ignoring their magic armor, which is insane. Cursing the Web will reapply the status, and it will make it almost impossible to get rid of, because normal web has 50% chance to reapply an webbed effect during the character's turn, but the cursed one has a 100% chance to reapply its effect. Cursed Smoke causes suffocation and blindness. Quick note about the surfaces and clouds. Everyone knows that they trigger their effects when the characters move on or through them, but there is another time when they are being triggered, and that is when the character gets their turn and they stand on a surface. For example, a character is standing on fire, they get their turn, the surface ticks and applies its effect. Additionally, if you curse the surface, it also ticks and triggers its effects. Since we started talking about the cursed interactions, let's mention the opposite blessed effects and surfaces. For example, casting Bless on the oil will immediately apply Fortify to anyone who stands on it. Blessed Ice is sort of similar, but it has only 50% chance to apply Armor of Frost on the characters, so you might have to move around to trigger it. Blessed Water and Blood will heal anyone who decides to walk on it, but to be honest, that healing effect is pretty low. The Undead will take the damage instead of healing. Blessed Poison is much more potent though, because it will apply a regeneration status, sort of like a restoration skill. Holy Fire gives higher fire resistance and immunity to burning. It also looks pretty cool. As you know, if a character has spider legs and they step into a web, they're gonna get a haste status. Anyone without spider legs will get unwebbed. But here's the trick. Use spider leg skill, spit the white thick sticky substance on the ground and then bless it. From now on, anyone who steps into this blessed web will get a haste effect and they won't be unwebbed. This could be a good way to give your team an AoE haste. The downside is that you either spit the normal web on your teammates, which unwebs them for 1 turn, and only then bless it to give them haste, or you spit it next to them, bless it, and they will have to walk into it one by one, wasting their action points. Blessed Smoke will give invisibility to anyone who walks into it. You can even attack from within the cloud and then immediately become invisible again if you move within the cloud. It also will trigger invisibility on your next turn if you stayed inside of the cloud. To create this cloud, either cast the spell directly or cast Bless on any normal smoke, which can be created by a smoke grenade, smoke arrow, or smoke cover skill. This Bless on normal smoke combo costs more action points, but less source points. Oh, quick disclaimer guys, now we're gonna open the Pandora box and talk about extremely powerful combos, so it's up to you to use them or not. Pyroclastic Eruption. This is one of the most broken spells in the game. If possible, you take the high ground, press the spell, and throw boulders at every target in range. The thing is, not only this spell has high damage per hit, the amount of targets is unlimited, but also the most important thing, each boulder this skill throws has an AoE around it, which can overlap, resulting in an absolutely ridiculous damage. Meaning, if you stack up a decent amount of enemies close to each other via teleportation or nether swap, and then press Pyroclastic Eruption, you'll most likely one-shot almost any party in this game. The Dust Blast acts in the same way, but it does way less damage. On the other hand, you get it way earlier in the game, plus it costs only 1 source point. Grasp of a Starved is another crazy spell which can do extremely high damage. You prepare the battlefield with Blood Rain or by exploding a bloated corpse, then press Grasp of a Starved to slap your opponents with a lot of damage if you've invested into Warfare and Intelligence. Mass Corpse Explosion, and Teleportation. Again, one of those skills which do extremely high damage. You just need to either group up enemies around some corpses or TP corpses to them. Scales quite well with intelligence and warfare. Deploy mass fire traps. There are two ways to use this skill. The first way is when you throw traps under the feet of your opponents and then end your turn. This will cause an automatic detonation which does high damage. The second way though is when you throw traps at your enemies again, but this time you manually detonate them with another skill or a surface during your current turn. This manual detonation does way more damage than an automatic one because it scales with pyrokinetic level of the character who triggers the explosion. Plus now this explosion can crit if you have Savage Swordledge talent, and also it can benefit from the high ground bonus. As you can imagine, with a proper setup you might stack up a lot of enemies close to each other through teleportation and nether swap, then throw mass fire traps under their feet and then manually detonate them with a Pyroclastic Eruption for Giga Galactic overkill damage. Oh, and keep in mind that the game remembers who created the surface, meaning if one of your characters created fire under the enemy, the stats of that character will be used to scale manual detonation damage. Like here, for example, this fire was created by Red Prince, who has 14 points in Pyro, Savage Swordledge, and a lot of intelligence. Lose has only 3 Pyro and low intelligence. She throws traps, but the detonation will be caused by fire created by Red Prince, and thus his stats will be used to calculate the damage and not Lose's. All previously mentioned powerful skills and combos will shine the most with TP stacking. It's when you use TP and nether swap to group up enemies. Shackles of Pain plus Living on the Edge. If you see an enemy with no physical armor, you may chain them with Shackles of Pain, then cast Living on the Edge, then walk into a Death Fog, Lava, or a Shrieker. You will take an enormous amount of damage, but you won't die because of Living on the Edge. And more than that, the damage you take will be also transferred to a chained enemy, and it will most likely one-shot that chained opponent. Be extremely careful with walking into the Death Fog though, because although you'll survive this, you will still get a Death Fog status, which might expire after Living on the Edge, and that will lead to a very sad outcome. Oh, another thing is, if you're doing a solo run, then Shackles of Pain might break an AI and they will skip their turn or just support their team instead of attacking you. But this doesn't work all the time though. Medusa Head and Teleportation. You can CC opponents with no magic armor for multiple turns if you teleport or stand close to those opponents while under the effect of Medusa Head. You see, not only it gives you a very powerful AoE CC skill, which is Petrifying Visage, but it also has a small Petrify aura around it. So as long as the opponents stay within the radius of this aura and their magic armor is depleted, they will be permanently petrified and you won't even need to spend any AP to reapply this CC, which works extremely well with delaying turns. Sabotage and Mass Sabotage. If you've invested into Sneaking Civil ability, then you can do the following. Enter Sneaking, then start pickpocketing an NPC. But instead of stealing items, you'll be placing grenades and special arrows into their inventory. Then when the fight starts, you press Sabotage or Mass Sabotage to detonate those gifts and presents you left in their pockets. Keep in mind that you still need to reach the minimal thievery requirement to start pickpocketing. So at higher levels, you'll need to invest into thievery on top of sneaking. You can keep items which will increase those stats and put them on when you need them. Alternatively, if you don't want to invest into sneaking a lot and the NPCs in the area are neutral, then you can use your party members to start the dialogues with surrounding NPCs to lock them in one place. This will make pickpocketing process much easier. If you have the Torture talent, then use Worm Tremor spell to entangle enemies for multiple turns, ignoring their magic armor. As you can imagine, this can be devastating to any melee character. But keep in mind that skills can still be used while the character is entangled. If you TP stack enemies, then the value of the combo will skyrocket. This combo can be used as early as level 4. Soulmate plus any healing. This combo can one-shot Undead and thus make any encounter with them very trivial. You see, Soulmate can be cast on both allies and enemies. More than that, you don't need to break their armor and it doesn't trigger the fight. For example, you see a skeleton in range, so you Soulmate to them and use Restoration on yourself. It both heals you and deals damage to the linked dude. Other healing spells like Cleanse Wounds and Mass Cleanse Wounds, First Aid, and so on can be used in this combo. But to be honest, the most efficient way to utilize this combo is with the giant healing potions. Your Soulmate before or during the fight, chug the potion, do massive damage. If you have 5-star Diner talent, you can double this potion damage. For the next two combos, I'm gonna reuse the footage from previous guides, because efficiency. If you're fighting solo, then you can completely break an AI by using Invisibility. This is how it goes. You use your skills, leave one action point for a Chameleon Cloak or Invis Potion. Use one of them and watch how AI won't know what to do. So it will just skip the turn. During your next round, delay your turn so that you preserve your invisibility. AI doesn't know what to do again, skips the turn one more time, and you hit enemies at the end of the turn. Skin Graft resets all cooldowns of your skills, but it can only be used once per fight. You can bypass it if you combine a sheet of paper, a source orb, and animal scales, which create a Skin Graft scroll, which doesn't have this once per fight restriction. If you stock up multiple scrolls and pair it with Adrenaline, you can theoretically get infinite action points in one turn. This is how it goes. Use your skills, then pop Adrenaline, then Skin Graft scroll, which immediately resets Adrenaline. Now you can use Adrenaline again, then Skin Graft scroll, and so on. Technically, this is the most overpowered combo in the game. You can make this even stronger by adding Elven Flesh Sacrifice and Fane's Time Warp into the combo. Next combo can give you Omega Giga damage bonus, but it depends on how many Skin Graft scrolls you have and how much time you're willing to spend. This is how it goes. You see a grouped up team of enemies, you cast Apotheosis, then Adrenaline, then Totems of the Necromancer, then use Skin Graft Scroll. Keep repeating the cycle of Adrenaline plus Totems of the Necromancer plus Skin Graft Scroll until you get bored. Once you're done, finish this combo with the Thick of the Fight skill. This spell gives you damage bonus based on the amount of characters around you, both hostile and allied. And well, since we spawned quadrillion totems near us, you can see where the damage numbers come from. And lastly, let's talk about the combo you saw at the beginning of the video. It's not a skill combo per se, it just abuses the dialogue mechanic of this game. You see, when a character enters a dialogue, you can cast buffs on them, and those buffs won't start expiring until you end the dialogue. It just so happens that Flaming Crescendo is a buff, and so you may recast it on your talking character as much as you want. Once you're satisfied with the amount of Flaming Crescendos, end the dialogue and wait for one turn to do huge amount of damage. You can easily survive this with the overcapped fire resistance granted by potions, or by using Living on the Edge. Keep in mind that you can stack crescendos in a dialogue on an NPC who will clearly become your opponent. Alright, that said, like, subscribe, recommend this video to your friends, I stream right here, and have a good day.